Today we're going to be talking about some vessels that you will see in drawings that I have not previously pointed out on some of the models from our previous circulatory videos. So this is the document we're working with, and I'm going to go down quite a few pages until we get to the pictures we're going to be talking about. This document will be attached to this video. It will be down in the description of the video. Okay, we've gone over all of these in previous videos until we get to this one right here. Okay, this is a picture of the head, and we're trying to see the arteries that are going on in this neck and head region. So we're going to start down here. This is your brachiocephalic trunk. Your brachiocephalic trunk is going to curve around. You can see it curving right here. Let me go ahead and get my little pen here. So here's your brachiocephalic trunk, and it's going to curve around, and that curve right here, that becomes your subclavian artery, and then it goes down here to your axillary artery. Okay. Oh, it moved it up so we can see another one down here at the bottom. Okay, then you have a little nub coming off of this subclavian artery. I'm going to trace it here in green. That little nub coming off right there, that is your internal thoracic artery. Now let's go back up. Okay, now we're going to be going again off of that subclavian. So you see here off this subclavian, you have this trunk right here that will then divide into 3 different parts. That trunk right here, so this part where I'm drawing the little circle of green, that's called your thyrocervical trunk. I always think of this as the first part of it, THR, the thyro, thinking of 3, because it has a 3-pronged tree coming off that trunk, okay? So thyro meaning 3, and cervical because it's going to be going up the cervical area or the neck region, okay? So again, that one right there in green is your thyrocervical trunk. Oop, trying to get rid of my eraser here and get me another pen. Okay, going again from the brachiocephalic trunk right here, you now have this tall artery, and it's going through all of these cervical vertebrae. That artery right there is your vertebral artery. It's going through the vertebrae. So that one's pretty easy to remember. Now going again from this brachiocephalic trunk, we're going to go straight up this way. This big, thick red vessel going up both sides of the neck is your common carotid artery. Then you have this swollen area right here. I'm circling in blue. That little swollen area is your carotid sinus. Okay, I'm going to erase this so we can go and move our picture up a little bit. Grabbing my pen again. Okay, then going across the face right here, this is going to be your facial artery. Then you have another one that comes around. It looks like it encircles the top of the mandible, and it's going to go into the maxillary area here. That is your maxillary artery. Then going up again, you have, if you remember from our model, this one that goes through the temporal bone or sits on top of the temporal bone right here. That is your superficial temporal artery. I'm going to erase those, and we're going to keep going with some more. Grabbing my pen again. Okay, and remember we had the brain and we had the circle of Willis. So here's your circle right here. The one coming off the front of the circle, that's going to be your anterior cerebral artery. Then you have another one that comes off kind of to the middle. That's going to be your middle cerebral artery. And then you have this one that comes off the bottom. Remember, that was the arms of the alien, if you remember looking at that video. That is your posterior cerebral artery. Then you have this one here at the base of the brain. The one at the base of the brain right here, that's your basilar artery. And then, of course, this one coming off onto the occipital bone, this is going to be your occipital artery. So those are all the ones you have to know in this picture. Okay, now we're going to go down to the next picture that you have to know. So instead of the arteries of the brain and neck area, now we're going over the the veins of the neck and brain area. So again, just like the artery, you have this vein that comes up through the vertebrae. That's going to be your vertebral artery. Then you have your internal jugular that goes right here up the neck, and it goes on both sides. So you have a left side and a right side. Then it's going to come across here, just like the artery did. That's your facial artery. Then it goes around here. That's going to be your I said facial artery. I meant facial vein. Sorry about that. Then you have this one that comes across and goes up the top of the mandible to the maxillary bone, or maxilla. This is going to be your maxillary vein. Then you still have the same vein like you did the artery that goes across this temporal bone. So that's your superficial temporal vein. Now we have some new, whoops, sorry, going to get my eraser. Now we have some new ones we need to look at. Okay. Again, grabbing my pen here. Okay, the new ones, we're going to start from the top. We had this in our head flat. The top blue here is your superior sagittal sinus. And then we had this one here. This was our transverse sinus. The one in the middle that goes straight into the middle of the brain, this one here is called your straight sinus. So on the top again is your superior sagittal sinus. Shooting straight through the middle of the brain here is your straight sinus. And this one that has a little curve to it and goes down towards the bottom of the brain, that's going to be your transverse sinus. Then this one that makes a little squiggly line, a curve right here, that's going to be your sigmoid sinus. You can see I'm drawing a line here in orange, your sigmoid sinus. A lot of times in the body when something makes a curve, we call it a sigmoid. And this sinus makes a curve, so this is your sigmoid sinus. Okay, now I'm going to erase all my scribbles here, and we are going to move to the next picture. Okay, in this picture here, I will get my pen again just in case we need it. Again, you have the vertebral artery going up here, and you have your internal jugular here. The one on the outside here is your external jugular. So again, this one here is going to be your internal jugular. Then you're going to have your external jugular, and then you'll have your vertebral. Okay. So erasing all of those. Let's go to our next ones. Okay, you had your brachiocephalic vein here and here, and your brachiocephalic vein will go around and curve underneath the clavicle. So this is your subclavian vein. Then you have your axillary vein right here. Going on the outside, this would be your cephalic vein. Going down into this chest area right here, coming just off to the side of that vertebrae or vertebral column, you see the hemiazygos. Then you see all the veins that are just on the underside of each rib. Those are your intercostal. Inter means between, and costal refers to the ribs. So intercostal veins are between the ribs. Then you have the huge vessel right here that I'm tracing here in orange. This is your inferior vena cava. I'm going to erase all my scribbles again and grab my pen. Now we have the phrenic. So the phrenic veins, phrenic means referring to the diaphragm. So you see these phrenic veins coming just up to the underside of the diaphragm. So that would be our phrenic vein, and here's going to be our other phrenic vein. So you can see those phrenic veins I'm tracing in orange right there. So the phrenic vein refers to the diaphragm. And then here you have your adrenal gland. So this vein going to the adrenal glands are going to be your adrenal veins. we're going to erase all that and go to our next picture. Okay, now we're looking at the thoracic cavity area here, and we're going to be talking about our arteries this time. Okay, grab my pen. Okay, so again, you have your brachiocephalic trunk coming off here. Then going over to our, almost to our subclavian artery, we have this tree trunk that has 3 different bridges or limbs coming off of it. That is your thyrocervical trunk. So remember, your thyrocervical trunk comes off your brachiocephalic vein, or sorry, brachiocephalic artery, and has a 3-prong limb coming off of it. Then just like in our arteries, we have, in our veins, we have these arteries that come between each of the ribs. They sit just on the underside of each rib. These are called your intercostal arteries. Then going over to the left side of this picture here, this vein that goes just on the other side of the sternum. So here's your sternum. So the vein, our artery going just on the other side of the sternum here is going to be your internal thoracic artery, because it's more to the internal side as compared to this one here, which is your external thoracic artery. It's your thoracic artery because it's in your thoracic cavity. Your internal is more inside or more to the midline, and your lateral is more to the lateral line. Okay. So again, coming off your brachiocephalic trunk, you have this 3-branched trunk here. That's your thyrocervical trunk. You have these arteries here coming just underneath each rib. Those are going to be your intercostal arteries. Remember, inter means between, and costal refers to the ribs. So intercostal arteries are going to be between the ribs. And the S here stands for your sternum. So just on the other side of the sternum here, we have this artery. This artery is going to be our internal thoracic artery. And this one over here is going to be our external thoracic artery. Now let's erase all that and go to the next picture we need to know. Oops. Okay, we did this one on a video and this one, same with those. So I'm going to skip all of these that we did on previous videos. And now let's talk about fetal circulation. So in fetal circulation, the fetal lungs are not working at this point. So all of the oxygen has to come in from the mom. So it comes from the mom into the placenta, from the placenta into the fetus. Okay, so here is the placenta. Let me grab my little pen here. Okay, so this entire structure here that I'm circling is your placenta. Then this entire structure here that I'm now tracing in hot pink, that entire structure is your umbilical cord. Okay, so placenta is all of this, and this entire cord with the vessels running through it is your umbilical cord. Grabbing my pen again. Okay, here inside of the umbilical cord, you see the umbilical vein in red. And remember, the colors are going to be swapped here because the oxygenated blood is coming into this baby from the mom. So the vein is oxygenated here. So this would be your umbilical vein. And then you see over here, I'm pointing out your umbilical arteries. So your umbilical arteries are going to be purple, and your umbilical vein is going to be red. Okay. So again, your umbilical vein is red and your umbilical arteries are purple. The blood's going to come in through the placenta, is going to come through these this umbilical vein. Then it's going to go up here to the ductus venosus. It will come into the inferior vena cava. It will dump into the right atrium. And then the blood in the fetus can go back and forth in the chambers. The left side and the right side of the heart are not cut off from each other. So this little circle right here, I'm gonna just draw the dot in pink. That little circle or that little hole is called your foramen ovale. And your foramen ovale is an opening that allows blood to go from the right atrium into the left atrium. Okay. Then up here you have your aorta. Here's your pulmonary trunk. And then I'm going to trace this structure right here. This structure right here is your ductus arteriosus. So again, remember your blood can go back and forth in the fetus. So this ductus arteriosus is going to connect the pulmonary trunk with the aorta, allowing blood to go back and forth between the two. Then the blood is going to come down and it's going to go out these umbilical arteries back through the umbilical cord into the placenta, where it will go to the mother to be reoxygenated. Okay. So make sure you know all of these structures in the baby. And I will tell you this, don't get confused with the umbilical vein and the umbilical artery. Remember that the baby is not supplying the oxygen here because his or her lungs do not work yet. So the oxygenated blood is coming in through the vein and out, the deoxygenated blood out through the umbilical artery. So the colors are switched. That's the #1 error in labeling these circulatory parts on the fetus. And those are all the pictures I needed to go over. Good luck on your practical.